Ishwaram Sachidananda Rupam Rasatkundalam Gokule Vrajaman Yashoda Biyolu Kalada Vamanam Paramishamadhyanta Koduchavam Gandhamurnitra Yugman Nijantam Saramboja Yugmena Satankanye Muhusashakam Patirikam Kakanda Vitagrava Damodarastakam Vidikshalila Virananda Kundi Prabhushani Madhyanta Madhyapayam Shikhageshu Bhaktan Jitatam Guna Prematastam Tatavritam Param Deva Moksham Namokshavadimba Nachanyam Hrideham Parisadam Deva Purnato Gopala Balam Padamimanha Shabirastam Kenam Jamatyantanilai Vitam Kuntalai Siddharatas Muhuchumbitam Bimbaratpadarami Manashtavirastam Salambaddha Bodhamurayanta Vishnu Kasira Prabhu Kadala Vipavishti Vishyati Dinam Patani Srihanishama Madhyam Veratmajo Badham Chaiva Jadat Ayamushito Bhakti Bhajo Peto Takha Prema Bhakti Swakame Priyacha Namokshe Graho Meti Damodare Pranitidhane Karyodalaya Vishaya. Namo Radhikaya Kariya Priyaya Namanantalinaya Devaya Tuvyam. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, everybody.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hope you can all hear me. And I just started sharing my screen, so now you should also be able to see the shared screen. Hope you are all doing fine. So today, being Kartik Mas, or also known as Damodar Mas, which is very important, especially in Vaishnava tradition. So I wanted to share this beautiful song, which is composed by Srila Vyasdev himself. It appears in Padma Puran, and it describes this very beautiful pastime of Krishna as a child. And then we will discuss this pastime today. We recited this particular Ashtakam. Ashtakam is a compilation of 8 verses, and Damodar. So Damodar can also be broken down into 2 parts. So Dam means to bind, and Udar means belly. So Krishna was naughty, as he often used to be. He gives pleasure to all his devotees. But sometimes that that naughtiness could be little irritating or troublesome. So Mother Yashoda got angry and she chastises Krishna, and so she binds him, and that particular form of Krishna who is bound by ropes to his belly is known as Damodar. Damodar literally means one whose belly is tied. So this is a beautiful song, compiled in Sanskrit, appears in Padma Puran. And this particular pastime which we will talk about today, it happened in this particular month of Kartik. And Kartik, actually, there are 2 kinds of calendars even in our Vedic system. There are some lunar calendars that begin on new moon day, and then there are some lunar calendars that begin on a full moon day. And so if you're following the new moon system, which many places in North India, I'm from Gujarat. In Gujarat, we follow our calendar starting from the new moon, and so the new year for the Gujaratis is the first day after Diwali, and so that's when Kartik begins. But in the Gaudiya, which is in Bengal, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, they follow the Gaudiya calendars begins on a full moon day, and the reason why is that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself appeared on the day of Holi, right? So that is Poonam, and so the calendar begins on Poonam. So there is a 15-day offset. So if you follow the Gaudiya calendar, actually, then the Kartik began yesterday, which was Sarat Purnima. Sarat Purnima, we know that Krishna performed his Ras Leela pastimes on this particular night. So that's the beginning of Kartik Mas. And so Diwali falls right in between it, right? So next 30 days, it is recommended that the Vaishnavas, they meditate on this beautiful pastime of Damodar, which we will discuss. And then they offer a ghee lamp, or if not a possible ghee lamp, any lamp, to the form of Krishna, baby Krishna, where he's tied with the mortar. And so that particular form, it is recommended to worship. And you can recite this beautiful song. And if you don't know, I will share that video which we played, and you could play it and try to sing along. The lyrics are right over here. I'll share that as well. And you can try to offer a ghee lamp once throughout this whole month. So up until definitely through Diwali, and then another 15 days after that. So from this full moon day to next full moon day. So that is the recommended process. So we'll go over the translation of this lyrics, and then I'll describe this pastime in brief. Anyone has any questions or comments before we begin? Okay. So the first verse is Namamishwaram Satchidananda Rupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Prajamanam Yashoda Biyo Lukh Ladhava Manam Paramrishtamatyanta Todhrutya Gopya. So Namamishwaram, Nama Ishwaram, I bow down to the Supreme Lord, who is Satchid Ananda Rupam, whose form is true, is full of bliss, full of knowledge. Lasata Kundalam Gokule Vrajamanam, and who is wearing a shark-shaped earring. So Krishna, when you look at the description of Krishna, it's generally described he wear pitambar, yellow clothes. And similarly, there are description of other paraphernalia. So it's described that Krishna likes to wear earrings which are shark-shaped. So Lasata Kundalam. And then Gokule Brajamanam. So in the Brajbhumi, Gokul, he appeared. Yashoda Bhiyo Lukha Dha Ladhavamanam Paramishtam Matyanto Dhrutya Gopya. So here in the translation it says that so he is embodiment of Satchidanand, whose shark-shaped earrings, they are swinging back and forth, right? Who is beautifully shining in the divine realm of Gokul. So he appeared in Gokul. And who, due to the offense of breaking the pot of yogurt that his mother was churning into butter, and then stealing the butter that was kept hanging from a swing, is quickly running from the wooden grinding mortar in the fear of Mother Yashoda. So he likes yogurt, right? And he likes butter especially, right? But he breaks yogurt also. Breaks the yogurt pots in many occasions. In this one particular instance, what happened was Krishna was very hungry, and Mother Yashoda was feeding him her breast milk. And meanwhile, she realized that she had put milk for boiling, and so then and she realized that actually it might be steaming and might be frothing out of the pot. So she put Krishna aside and ran to get the milk. Krishna, being a child, he manifests that be like childish behavior, and because he was still hungry and hunger was not satisfied, he got a little angry. And so in order to show his anger, what he does is that, okay, why you stopped feeding me and you went to do something else. So then he goes and breaks the pot of yogurt. And then he goes and starts eating butter. And so when Mother Yashoda comes back and she realizes what happened, she's angry. And so then she chases after Krishna. And eventually, Krishna is running fast. He's a small baby, is very agile. But Mother Yashoda is finally able to get hold of him. And then she says, as a punishment, I'm going to tie you to a grinding mortar. And so a grinding mortar, what we call ukhal in Indian language, in Hindi, is it's like if you see, you might have seen in that. Let me see if I can pull up that picture. Damodarastakam grinding. So it's yeah, here you see a picture. So that's a grinding motor. And then Krishna is tied. Where's the picture? I lost it. I think you can see it over here. Yeah, it's like, could be a wooden, could be stone, but it's basically mortar and pestle, right? So you could use for grinding grains or spices. So Mother Yashoda ties him up, but then in order to tie him, what's happening is that she gets a long rope and she goes around and tries to tie him, but the rope is not long enough. It's 2 inches short, and she's surprised, and so she goes inside her home and tries to get another piece of rope, ties it to the first piece of rope, and then says this should be enough. And she again makes an attempt, but again the rope is 2 inches short, and so he does this a couple of times, and every time it's always 2 inches short. And then she is exhausted, and then when Krishna sees that what happened, he allows Mother Yashoda to bind him. And so the moral is that, well, Krishna cannot be captured by our own effort, but by the love of his pure devotees, he allows himself to be captured. So Mother Yashoda obviously is a very pure devotee of Krishna. She has taken the role of being Krishna's mother, and so as a mother, she would chastise Krishna. And so that Krishna can enjoy the pastime nicely, himself forgets that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so when Mother Yashoda was running after him with a stick in her hand, and finally she caught him, Krishna was trembling, as we'll see in the next verse. And he was crying. And so the person from whom even the fear personified is fearful, that Supreme Person is overcome by fear because of the pure love of his devotees. So he's not faking, he's not imitating, he's really experiencing that fear. So that's what it describes. So she basically runs and finally catches him, and then tries to bind him. So next what he's saying, he's crying and rubbing his eyes again and again with his 2 lotus hands. His eyes are filled with fear, and the necklace of pearls around his neck, which is marked by 3 lines like conch shell. So what happens is, if you observe the neck, sometimes we see there are wrinkles, not wrinkles actually, but marks. Like this, it's basically this fold of the skin, and because he's fearful and he's crying, that his entire body along with the neck is shaking, and especially because he's breathing heavily. He was just running. And so that's the description given over here, that Trirekanka Kantha, there are 3 lines which distinctly appear on his neck. And there are different metaphors that are used to describe the beauty. So like Krishna's nose is compared to a sesame seed, the tip of his nose. And so his eyes, we see the Kamalanayanam, lotus-like eyes. And so similarly, the conch is very beautiful to look at. If you look at the conch, it has a shape where it's a little bit broad on the top, and it kind of has a smooth curve, and it becomes a little narrow. So Krishna's neck is compared to a conch shell. So he is shaking because of his quick breathing, right? Because he was crying. So to this Supreme Lord, Sri Damodar, whose belly is not bound with ropes, but with his mother's pure love, I offer my humble obeisances. So that's the implication over here. Like Krishna was not captured first because Mother Yashoda wanted to tie him by force, but he was captured by her pure love. Otherwise, no one can capture Krishna. Right? Then third verse it says that by such childhood pastimes as this, he is drowning the inhabitants of Gokula in the pools of ecstasy, and is revealing to those devotees who are absorbed in knowledge of his supreme majesty and opulence that he is only conquered by devotees whose pure love is imbued with intimacy and is free from all the conceptions of awe and reverence. So this is another important point. So Krishna in his original form, that's why he appears, in his original form, he actually lives in a village. He's not a prince or a king. And when we talk about kings and prince, the whole mood or the ambience is that of awe and reverence. And whenever there is awe and reverence, it inhibits the free expression of love and emotions. So Krishna does not like to be looked upon as God or someone with awe and reverence. Then that intimacy doesn't develop. And so, though all associates of Krishna are very fortunate, including the residents of Mathura, residents of Dwarka, all the queens of Dwarka, but the superlative position is that of the residents of Gokul and Vrindavan, because they are not overcome by the awe and reverence which you find in Mathura and Dwarka. And so in that village atmosphere, everyone is a friend of Krishna. All elderly people, they are all parents of Krishna. In all the gopis, they are conjugal lovers of Krishna. And Krishna makes himself available to everyone, to all of his pure devotees, and they can intimately and freely express all their feelings. They can express they're not happy. They can become angry. His friends used to chastise him, and so in this way, all the emotions in love and relationship can develop to superlative extent. So to that supreme person, Lord Damodara, Vyasdev is saying that he offers obeisances hundreds and hundreds of times. O Lord, although you are able to give all kind of benedictions, I do not pray to you for the boon of impersonal liberation, nor the highest liberation of the eternal life in Vaikuntha, nor any other boon which may be obtained by executing the 9 processes of bhakti. So the devotional service comprises of 9 processes, which is described by Prahlad Maharaj in Srimad Bhagavatam. It begins with Shravanam, or hearing. So Shravanam is the first process. Kirtanam is glorification. So as soon as you hear, and by hearing, we can relate. So when we hear glorification about someone, we begin to appreciate that person. So the first process is hearing. And we begin to appreciate what happens, what the next process, the next logical step is, we start glorifying it. So that is Kirtanam. Kirtanam is glorification. So first is Shravanam, then is Kirtanam. Vishnu Smaranam, then we start remembering that person. Right, so Vishnu, and specifically it is referring to Vishnu or Krishna. Vishnu Smaranam, Saranam Kirtan, Vishnu's Pada Sevanam, then you worship the lotus feet of the Lord. Archanam, then you offer Arti, Archana. Vandanam, bowing down. Archanam Vandam, then Dashyam, you first begin to worship the Lord in servitorship. Because when you talk about friendship, parental affection, conjugal affection, the primary foundation of that is service. So Dasyam, Sakyam, then, because in friendship is also service. Friends, they serve each other. Dasyam, Sakyam. And then Atmanivedanam. Atmanivedanam is full surrender. And then if you look at different description in Puranas and scriptures, there are individuals who have achieved the highest perfection just by following one of the processes. Now, a devotee can practice all the 9 processes, but there are devotees who have just done one of these and they've achieved the same highest perfection. So Shravanam, Parikshit Maharaj, just by listening Srimad Bhagavatam, he achieved perfection in just for 1 week, 7 days and 7 nights he heard. Sukdev Goswami was speaking, so Kirtanam, right? So he achieved perfection by speaking Bhagavatam. Vishnu Smaranam, Dhruva Maharaj, he was always remembering Narayana. He achieved the highest abode. Pada Sevanam, I believe Ambarish Maharaj's example is given. He is always engaged in deity worship. Pada Sevanam. Archanam, who is the example of Archanam? Shravana Prabhu, do you remember? Archanam, generally example, VG Mataji, if you are listening. Archanam, Vandanam, Dashyam, Hanuman example comes up. Dashyam, Sakyam, Arjuna, and there are many others. They exemplify Sakyam. And Atmanivedanam is Bali Maharaj. So Bali Maharaj, when Vishnu appeared in the form of a Brahmana, Vamana Dev. Yes, sir. Mahaprabhu.
Prabhu, Ambarish Maharaj is very devotional service.
That is Arshanam or Vandanam?
For everything, for all the 9 devotional processes, Maharaj is an example.
Ambarish Maharaj exemplify all 9 of them. Yeah. Okay.
But specifically for Arshanam and Vandanam, Prabhu.
Okay. I think there is one of the purports is described. There's an example given for each of them. I cannot recall which one is for Archanam and Vandanam. But others I mentioned, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. So in this way, one can achieve perfection. Now, when the devotee is engaging in all these 9 processes or one of these, they only want to please the Lord. And the liberation becomes secondary. It's a byproduct. And the devotee, they might initially be motivated by material benedictions or even liberation, but then as they begin to relish the bliss of bhakti, then they're not interested in that. So we see many examples. Dhruv Maharaj, he was 5-year-old boy, and he wanted to achieve the highest kingdom because he was offended, that is, by his stepmother, who said that, hey, you cannot sit on your father's lap until you take birth from my womb. And so, being Kshatriya, he took an offense. And then he went to the forest and wanted to do penance and austerity to get a boon from Brahma, to get a kingdom even greater than his father. But ultimately, when he relishes bhakti, say when Lord appears, he says, the original intention was for me to, achieve that pleasure, but I'm not. Now that I have had your darshan, I'm not interested in. Similarly, we see Sukadeva Goswami, he was Brahmavadi. Brahmavadi are interested in liberation, but then when he heard or relished Srimad Bhagavatam from Vyasadeva, he was not interested in getting liberation. So that's why here Vyasadeva is saying, I do not pray for the boon of impersonal liberation.
Prabhu, a quick thing, Prabhu.
Yeah.
So for Prithu Maharaj is an example of Archanam, and Gajendra is an example for Vandanam.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Archanam is Prithu Maharaj, and Gajendra is what?
For Vandanam. Gajendra.
Vandanam. So Gajendra is another pastime, is a story. That's it. In previous life, he was a king, Indradyumna, then he takes for the form of an elephant because he's cursed. But he's attacked by an alligator, and he fights for a long time, but elephant is not strong inside water. And then he realizes that, I cannot win this battle. But he was a devotee in his previous life, so he recalls this very beautiful prayer that he had learned, and so he recites that, and the Lord immediately appears on Garuda and delivers him. So Vandanam, Vandanam means offering nice prayers. So it's in Bhagavatam, it says that Gajendra Stuti, who recites that Gajendra Stuti every single day, morning and evening, without fail, is guaranteed to achieve the highest perfection, just like Gajendra did. So here Srila Vyasadeva is saying that I'm not motivated by any other things like material benedictions or liberation, but I'm offering this praise just out of pure love. So what is my wish? Well, even if I don't get liberation, all I wish is that I always, behold this beautiful form of Bal Gopal in Vrindavan. May this form always be manifest in my heart. What is the use for any other benediction? So even if I achieve liberation, what do I want to see in the spiritual world? I want to relish all these pastimes. So even if I don't achieve spiritual world, wherever you want me to be, may I always behold this beautiful pastime, and that's what he's praying. In the next verse, there's a beautiful description of Krishna's transcendental form, and his lotus-like face is covered by curly hairs, which are very soft and black, and then you see red marks on his hair from Mother Yashoda kissing him, whose lips were like reddish bimba fruit, and so that mark is seen on Krishna's nice, soft, curly, blackish hair, and that makes it look very beautiful. And so may I behold this beautiful vision in my heart. Thousands and thousands of other benedictions are no use to me. In the next verse, Srila Vyasadeva is saying, O Supreme Lord, I offer my obeisances to you. O Damodar, one whose belly is tied, O Ananta, one who is unlimited, O Vishnu, O Master, O my Lord, please be pleased upon me. By showering your glance of mercy upon me, deliver this poor, ignorant fool who is immersed in the ocean of worldly sorrows and become visible to my eyes. So Vyasadeva is taking a humble position of being engaged in different worldly affairs, though he is always fully dedicated in compiling all this transcendental literature, but he's taking this humble position. And so he's requesting the Lord to be merciful to him so that he can he can be immersed in this devotional mood. The next verse that is described, this is a further extension of that pastime. So what happens after Krishna is tied to the grinding mortar, and then Mother Yashoda leaves that place? So in Nanda Maharaj's courtyard, there were two trees, Tamala and Arjuna, the kind of trees, and then they were very close to each other. And so Krishna was tied in the courtyard to the grinding mortar. And then as soon as Mother Yashoda leaves, Krishna has said, okay, I have another important thing to do. So he basically pulls the grinding mortar down. It's still tied to him. And so now he and the grinding mortar both are down, and he starts crawling. And he crawls and pulls this heavy grinding mortar all the way up to those two Tamal and Arjuna trees. And then he passes between those trees, and the grinding mortar is lying flat. It's tilted, and the grinding mortar gets stuck between the trees. Then he pulls it very hard. And as soon as he pulls, what happens is those two trees, these huge trees, they come crashing down. And from those trees, two personalities appear, Kuvera, which are the sons of Kuvera, Manigriva and Nal Kuvera. So Kuvera is the treasurer of the demigods, and Manigriva and Nal Kuvera, they were his two sons. And being a treasurer of the demigods, obviously he has access to a lot of wealth. He has a good position. And as we see in this material world, also in our experiences, the sons of those who are extremely rich, they tend to be spoiled. Not every single one of them, but the tendency is there because they have access to a lot of comforts and riches and pleasure. And so being situated in these heavenly planets, these two boys, they were very young and handsome, and they were intoxicated by wealth, and they were definitely literally intoxicated by wine. So once they were enjoying those heavenly apsaras, and they were drinking wine, and they were bathing in a lake, and there were other apsaras along with them, and they were not dressed, neither them nor the apsaras. And Narad Muni passes by. And Narad Muni, as soon as the apsaras realize there was a sage is coming, they feel shy. They run away, they cover themselves, and they run away from there. But these two boys, Manigriva and Nal Kuvera, they were still very intoxicated. They did not realize what's going on, and they are still shamelessly, just lying where they were. They did not try to, cover themselves or apologize or offer any respects. And Narada Muni comes and basically chastises him. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, there is beautiful description of, these instructions are very spiritually potent. If we have time, maybe we should go over there, because that's the philosophical aspect of it, because there is both religion without philosophy is only sentiments, and philosophy without religion is mental speculations. Both is needed. So he says many things. In time we will probably go through it. But anyway, in the end, he says that you're shamelessly lying like this. You are behaving like trees. Trees, they are naked. They are standing out, exposed to the elements. And since you also did not move, it's befitting that you become trees. So they are cursed to become trees. But then curse by pure devotees is, they don't curse because of their own anger. It's not that they are frustrated. They have nothing. They have nothing to lose. That curse is for their the spiritual benefit of the person who is cursed. And so that curse actually in a way is blessing. He says eventually after being in that body of trees for a long time, when you realize your mistake and you repent, eventually you'll be delivered by Krishna. And so that's what happens. So when Krishna uproots those trees, Nal, Kovera and Manigreva appear, they ask for forgiveness, they offer obeisances to Krishna, they glorify him, and then eventually they are liberated. And so here Srila Vyasadeva is describing that particular pastime. He says that just like you delivered the sons of Kuvera from the curse of Narada and made them into great devotees in your baby form, which was tied to the rope of a wooden grinding mortar, in the same way, please give prema bhakti to me. He says, you delivered the two sons of Kuvera, and then they are blessed with that devotional attitude. So please, you're providing that to the offenders, then kindly provide me also. And that way he's praying. And in the last verse, it's described, O Lord Damodar, I offer my obeisances to these effulgent rope which binds your belly. And no one can bind Krishna, right? And in spiritual world, what we call, sometimes are called inanimate objects. So animate and inanimate. And in Sanskrit, we call char and achar. Char is moving, achar is not moving. But all of them have, a personality and consciousness. And so in that way, like the flute that Krishna is playing is also a personality. It's not an lifeless object. And so sometimes you see description of the gopis saying that, oh, this flute is so more is way more fortunate than us, because it's always embracing the lips of Krishna. So in this way, this effulgent rope by which Krishna was bound to his belly, it cannot be an ordinary rope. No one can bind Krishna, but this rope is binding Krishna and is tied to his belly. And so Vyasadeva is offering his obeisances to the rope. And he is offering the obeisances to the belly because his belly encompasses the entire universe. Just like we see Garbhodakshai Vishnu, from his body, the lotus springs, and from the lotus, all the 14 planetary systems, they are all arranged in a lotus-like format. So this rope is, in a way, it's glorification of the rope also. The belly in which the entire abode or the entire universe is encompassed, that belly is tied by that rope. And finally, Vyasadeva is offering obeisances to the most beloved Srimati Radharani. And I offer all obeisances to you, who is Lord himself, and who displays his unlimited pastime. So it's a very beautiful prayer. I'll share the link and the song, and I recommend that you recite. We are also sending out Damodar kits to all those who are interested. So the Damodar kit actually comprises of a photo of Lord Damodar, also Radha, Nil, Madhav, who are the deities over here locally in Seattle. We also have some incense, some dry prasadam, and so we can ship it out. Hopefully you can get it in 1 week. And meanwhile, you can continue to offer, at least sing the song, even if you don't have a photo of Damodar. You can offer it to any other photo of Krishna that you might have at home. But meanwhile, we can send it at no cost. So if you're interested, you can send me a personal message on WhatsApp with your name, address, and we'll arrange those to be shipped out to you. Having said that, I just wanted to take a pause over here if anyone had any questions, comments. Anyone? No? Okay. It's 5:41, and I know today is Halloween. Some of you might have kids at home who might want to go out and do some celebration, and so I just wanted to ask if anyone had other plans this evening and would like to keep it short. I can probably go for another, if there are other plans, I can probably go for another 10-15 minutes and we could take a break. Or if you want, we could continue with a little bit more discussion on this pastime and then go on to Bhagavad Gita. anyone would like to leave early, you can raise your hand and I can just get an idea of how many of you have other plans and would like to end the class early. Okay, I have one individual parliament. Anyone else? Okay, I think others are interested in continuing. So Parliament, if it's okay with you, we'll continue the discussion.
Yes, please move forward. Please move forward. I think I'll stay online at least as long as I can, probably just around 6 o'clock, and then I need to drop.
Okay, sure, no worries. Thank you. Okay, so before we go to Bhagavad Gita, I think I'll talk a little bit about the further instruction that Narada Muni provides to the two sons of Nal Kuvera and Manigriva, sons of Kuvera, because it's very instructive. It's many times we discuss the pastimes of Lord Damodara, those who are familiar, but then we don't go necessarily into details of those instructions that Narada Muni provides. And when I read them first time, I found there's a lot of learnings in that we can personally apply to our life. And so I just wanted to read that. So all the pastimes of Krishna are the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and then Damodar pastimes. Should be further up. Let me just read it. Oh yeah, it should be just saying Dilibans of Manigriva, maybe. Kuvera. I'll just read through it. It should not take long. Early pastimes, Tenukasura, Yasuda. Here, Yasuda. Dilibans of Yamal Arjuna trees. So here referred to in the title as the names of the trees and not the names of the personalities. Okay. So that's chapter 10, canto 10. So I gave you the background. I'll likely go to where the instructions are. Yeah, here. Seeing the two sons of the demigods naked and intoxicated by opulence and false prestige, Devarsi Narada, in order to show them special mercy, desired to give them a special curse. Thus he spoke as follows. He said, among all the attractions of material enjoyment, the attraction of riches bewilders one's intelligence, more than having a beautiful bodily features, more than taking a birth in an aristocratic family, and more than being learned. So these are all the different opulences, right? Somebody might be blessed with good knowledge, birth in a good aristocratic family, a very beautiful body, but Narada Muni is saying more than any of these opulences, the opulence of riches, wealth, it bewilders one's intelligence. And sometimes we see people when they are too wealthy, they think they are above the law, they are arrogant, they tend to become like that. Not everyone, so not generalize it, but the tendency is there. And one is uneducated but falsely puffed up by wealth, and the result is what? One just engages in his wealth in enjoying wine, women, and gambling. So all the vices, that could be the indulging in all the vices could be the outcome when one is intoxicated by wealth. And so Parikshit Maharaj, we see when the Kali Yuga was beginning, the personality of Kali, he appeared, and he was attacking the bull who represents religion, dharma. And Parikshit Maharaj, being very righteous king, he comes and stops him. He said, you cannot, in my kingdom, I do not allow adharma. And Kali is very smart. And he says, well, he knows that Kshatriya dharma is that if anyone takes shelter of Kshatriya, the Kshatriya has to give shelter. If one surrenders to a Kshatriya, no matter what that person's background is, you have to give shelter. So Kali is very smart. So he takes shelter of Parikshit. He apologizes. He says, okay, please forgive me, but you give shelter to everyone. I'm requesting that you give shelter to me. And Parikshit is also smart. So he says, well, if I allow this Kali to take shelter, then the whole kingdom would be ruined. And he said, so he gives shelter, but he does it in a tricky way. He says, okay, you can stay wherever there is meat eating, prostitution, gambling, and indulgence in wine. And the Kali says, well, in your kingdom, you will not find this anywhere. So where can I take shelter? So you better give me shelter in gold or money. And so it's a tricky thing. Okay, say, okay, I'll give you shelter in wealth. And so the point being is that it's a very long topic. I won't discuss that today, but the traditionally the most trading or anything is all barter system, and selling anything for money was very restricted, and one would do even very rarely and only with people whom you trust, your friends or neighbors, but you won't do any kind of trading with any stranger. Again, money, it has, when you talk about currency is what we call advantages or conveniences. What are the conveniences? It provides anonymity. It is, you can easily carry. In barter system, you cannot easily trade. I mean, you cannot stacking grains and pounds and pounds of grains or sacks of grains, and then trading in that. But money is just coins, right? You can easily carry. There is you cannot trace it in the sense that where does this gold coin come from? Well, if you have, otherwise if you trade in clothes or if you get grains, it means, oh, you got the grains from the farmer, right? Or the cloth from the weaver. But because of the conveniences and advantages of money, it also can be used for illicit activities. And so that was the reason Kali wanted shelter in gold. So here Narada Muni is saying that when one gets a lot of wealth, and that in terms of gold or other kind of basically wealth in terms of gold or precious metals or stones, and because of those riches, when one's intelligence is bewildered, and then one degrades into enjoying wine, women, and gambling. And so then he says, unable to control their senses, rascals who are falsely proud of their riches or their birth in aristocratic families, they are so cruel that to maintain their perishable bodies, which they think will never grow old or die, they kill poor animals without mercy. And sometimes they kill animals merely to enjoy excursion. Sometimes they kill for sport, just for fun. They go and kill, like, hunting animals for no reason. And then other for, for satisfying the tongue. So when one is intoxicated by wealth, they only want their own comfort, and in order to satisfy their own comfort, they don't think about others. And so one thing, so on the top, Narada already mentions wine, women, and gambling. So these are three illicit sex activities, and the fourth illicit activities or sinful activity is killing animals just for satisfying one's tongue. And so then that's the fourth one. And when in the next verse he says, while living, one may be proud of one's body, thinking oneself to be a very big man, could be an important position, a president, minister, or even a demigod. But whatever one may be, after the death, this body will turn into worms or into stool or ashes, right? So body is perishable, and that's what we are discussing in Bhagavad Gita right now. We started discussion about distinction between the soul and the body. Says if one kills poor animals simply to satisfy temporary whims of this body, one does not know that actually in the next life one will have to suffer for such sinful activities, and he must go to hell and suffer the results of his action. So the dharma, according to the Vedic scriptures, is it's a duty of the king to award punishment. Why? Because it's better for the offender to take punishment in this life, or to do an atonement willingly. If either they do willingly atonement, and there are detailed description in Manu Samhita how one can atone for different sins. Sometimes, like they say, for instance, that if somebody kills a cow, then for months they have to fast and then live in the cow shed with the cows. They have to serve the cows. And there are other detailed description. In this way, they are actually trying to change their mentality, or the king punishes them. And the whole idea of punishment is so that if they correct their attitude and atone in this very life before the body dies, then they don't have to go to hell. Because otherwise they go to hell and then the suffering is even more. And so we see in the Western world, or even in other places in Asia also now, this whole idea of humanism, where they say, well, human life is so precious that even if somebody commits a murder, the extreme liberal idea is that, well, capital punishment should be abolished. And let's give them a chance and forgive them. So now if there are people who have genuinely repented, maybe there's a case for it. But otherwise, the thing is, if they don't go punishment in this life, then the hellish sufferings are even more worse. And so here Narada Muni is saying that for your sinful activities in your next life, you might have to suffer more. So better I punish you now, right? And so then he further elaborates on that theme, and he's saying that, see, all this being intoxicated by wealth, all these illicit activities, what are they meant for? We want to gratify our own body. But then Narada Muni is asking, whom does the body belong to? Right? Does this body belong to the employer who gives me salary? Does it belong to me? Or does it belong to my father and mother who gave me birth? Does it belong to the person who forces me to do things by either blackmailing or other, not blackmailing, but there could be other motivation, just like family members. Sometimes they prod you to sort of emotionally blackmail or somehow or other make you, do things, which sometimes could be beyond what you can possibly do, but they don't want to own their own responsibilities. That could be one. Or in case of a slave who is owned by a master who purchases it, does that body belong to that master? Or does it belong to the sons who would eventually burn it in fire? Or does it belong to the fire itself who consumes it? Or does it belong to the dogs who might eat it? Sometimes there's no one to claim the dead body, right? And then the vultures and dogs and other animals would claim. So the point here is that all these individuals, they're all claiming authority over our body. So who is the rightful claimant? And Narada Muni says that no one has been able to ascertain this. So to maintain the body for our own sense gratification, performing sinful activities is not good. Or sometimes when we say, my employer is trying to get things out of me, this so-called friend, so-called relative is trying to get this out of me, or my, so all the different living entities, they want something from me. I know. So if we get 5-10 minutes or, my own time, I'm happy, right? I want my own independence. But what do we do when we are alone? The tendency is to, again, is not to do austerity or engage in something spiritual, but the natural tendency is, okay, now I want to gratify my own senses. So somebody else might be abusing in a way to get something out from us or our body for their own enjoyment. And when we are on our own, we are again misusing our body for our own self enjoyment. So the Narada Muni basically saying is that actually one should understand that no one is the rightful claimant of all this body, though there are so many competing claimants. So better, actually, this body is a common property of everyone, and that's what we should understand. And so we should not think, this person is trying to, exploit me or, get this out of me, and no one should have that right, and I have my own independence and my own freedom to engage in my own sense gratification. And so that idea is condemned. So he says this body, after all, is produced by unmanifested nature and again annihilated and merged into natural elements. Therefore, it is the common property of everyone. See, that's what he's saying. Under these circumstances, who but a rascal claims that this property is his own, and while maintaining it, commits so much sinful activities like killing animals just to satisfy one's whims. And he says, atheistic fools and rascals who are very proud of wealth fail to see things as they are. Therefore, returning them to poverty is proper ointment for their eyes, so they may see things as they are. at least a poverty-stricken man can realize how painful poverty is, and therefore he will not want others to be in a painful condition like his own. So a lot of rich people who have never experienced any kind of inconvenience in the life, they don't know the sufferings of others. Just like if somebody is never pricked by a pin, can never understand what the feeling of that pain is, who is pin pricked, right? But somebody who is pin pricked knows that, what that pain is. And this person who is suffering is experiencing the same pain which I had experienced in the past. And so that pain is same, whether somebody is rich or poor or ugly or beautiful. The pain, experience of pain is same for everyone. And so somebody who has suffered does not want other to suffer. And the same, those who are rich, because you have not experienced what that pain is or what poverty is, you are misusing your wealth. So better that you experience that pain, and that's what he's saying. See, this is very beautiful verse. This is this is a punchline. I highly recommend this and the next one. A poverty-stricken man must automatically undergo austerities and penances because he does not have the wealth to possess anything. Thus his false prestige is vanquished. Always in need of food, shelter, and clothing, he must be satisfied with what is obtained by the mercy of providence. Undergoing such compulsory austerities is good for him because this purifies him and completely frees him from false ego. So just like it is said that, somebody who understands pharmacy and then he knows how the medicine is working, and he takes medicine and the medicine works for him. And somebody who does not know how the medical science is working and takes the medicine is still also benefited. So basically, whether we do something knowingly or unknowingly, the benefit is there. So somebody who might be doing somebody who might be fasting willingly. So like Damodar month, many people fast. Ekadasi, we fast. So voluntary austerity or fasting is definitely beneficial. Similarly, if somebody is not doing voluntarily, but if they're forced to do it, they still get the same benefit. So he's saying that one who is poverty stricken, he might not be willingly fast, but he's forced to fast. Now that a wealthy person might be egoistic, but a poverty stricken man who might be forced to beg, he's turned down at every corner, is not respected, automatically the false prestige comes down. Also the tendency to satisfy the tongue and belly and genitals, that comes when these senses are strong. And how do they get strong? By rich, opulent food and a lot of luxuries. When you see a lot of people who don't have good nutrition or forced to because of their situation, their senses are not powerful. So that urge to gratify one's senses is also restricted. And so they are automatically made to be humble. Now there are some people who might take to crime, right? I mean, we see that also, but the situation is at least favorable. Just like not that every single person who is wealthy is egoistic. Similarly, it's not that every poverty-stricken person is humble. But then the poverty position is suitable for cultivating humility. So let's just say that. Always hungry and longing for sufficient food, a poverty-stricken man gradually becomes weaker and weaker. Having no extra potencies, his senses are automatically pacified. You see, poverty-stricken man therefore is unable to perform harmful, envious activities. In other words, such a man automatically gains the result of austerities and penances adopted voluntarily by saintly persons. So that's what I was mentioning earlier, is that whether one does voluntarily or involuntarily, one gets the same benefit. So in this way, saintly persons may, that's why sadhus, they never go to a rich man's home. It's said that a sannyasi should never visit a king, because a king is considered a visayi, one who is engaged in a lot of sensual pleasures. But a sadhu never hesitates to visit a poor man, because he's not affected by that bad association of king. Generally, it's not that all kings are bad, but the idea that one who is very rich and very aristocratic, they tend to be engaged in sensual enjoyment, and such association might not be favorable for a sannyasi especially. So in this way, he goes on and he actually curses. Then he says that, hey, you know, the further description is there. So the essence, I believe I already covered over here. Why should people neglect association of such exalted spiritual personalities? Try to associate with materialists, taking shelter of non-devotees, most of whom are proud and rich. So finally, he punishes them. He says that, you know, it's better that you actually take the form of trees, you know, because you are naked, and just like trees are naked, and you know, you did not move when you saw me, and trees don't move, and but this will be eventually beneficial to you. So that is the sum and substance. Now, you know, this should not be misinterpreted that, you know, people, because it's beneficial for them to be poverty stricken and that is purifying, we should not be charitable to those people. You know, that is a very bad attitude. You know, as I said last time, man should be satisfied by, we should never be satisfied by three things, which one of them is charity, right? Second is chanting japa, and third is studying scriptures. So we should definitely engage in charity. And you know, when we see that you know, people are needy, we can go and help them. But at the same time, our understanding is not same as that of you know, those who believe in mundane altruism. We know why that person is suffering, and that suffering is beneficial for them for their own purification, as Narada Muni explained, that when they are forced to voluntarily accept austerity and fasting, and you know, they are actually getting spiritually purified. But we should not use that as an excuse to justify that, oh, let them get purified and I'm not going to do charity, and that's not good for us. So it's very tricky. You know, you have to really you know, understand the principles. Okay, so that's what basically I wanted to say on this topic. Anyone has any questions or comments? No? Okay. If there are no questions or comments, I think we still have 30 minutes. So we'll do one verse. We should be able to do one verse of Bhagavad Gita, and then we'll take a break. And we can continue the discussion next time. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I believe we completed up until verse number 15, and then we can continue from verse 16. नासतो विद्यते भावो ना भावो विद्यते सतः उभयोरपि दृष्टोऽन्तस्त्वा अनयोस्तत्त्वदर्शिभिः. Translation: those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, that is the material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal, which is the soul, there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of the both. So you know, there is some play of words over here, and so it might not be obvious, but essentially what it is trying to see is that those who are seers of the truth, those who see things as they are. And how do they see the truth? Because they have actually studied the nature of things. What they have studied, primarily they have, whatever is out there in the material world, they have classified into two categories. What are those two categories? And you know, after studying in detail, they say there are things which endure, that means they last forever, and there are things that they do not endure, those which have no endurance. And then the other categories, those who are things which are eternal. And so you think most of the things, all the manifestations in this world, they do not have endurance. So beginning with our body, right? What is the mortality rate in America? What's the mortality rate in India? What's the mortality rate in this whole universe? 100%, right? You know, there's no one who will not die. And you know, different personalities like Ravan, Hiranyakashipu, they've already tried it. They tried to get that boon somehow or other. You know, they say, I'll make it long-winded. May I never die in the day or night, or neither by a man or an animal, or neither by a weapon. Or so in this way, they did extreme austerity, tried all the things, but no one. There's no one who is immortal. At least in the, I mean, in terms of bodily existence. But then there is another entity which is a soul that is eternal, and that soul there is no change. The soul never dies. And so this is the truth, right? And so in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is explaining that the body is constantly changing and there is no endurance to the changing body. The body is changing every moment by actions and reactions of different cells is admitted by modern medical science. So every moment the cells of the body are changing. We know that, right? So they grow, they multiply, they divide, which is same actually biology, like they multiply by division. The cell, one cell divides into two, and in that sense they multiplies. The cells grow old and cells die, and similarly, eventually the body grows old, the body dies. It's a growth and it says growth and old age are taking place in the body every moment. But the spirit soul exists permanently, remaining the same despite all the changes of the body and the mind. That is the difference between matter and spirit. By nature, the body is ever changing and the soul is eternal. The conclusion is established by all the classes of seers of the truth, both impersonalists and personalists. So we mentioned there are two kinds of spiritualists, right, who accept that the ultimate truth or the supreme is a personality, the supreme personality of Godhead. Those are called personalists. The impersonalists, they do not have the idea of the personality of Godhead, or they think that the absolute truth is impersonal. Within that, there are two categories: Brahmavadis and Mayavadis. So Brahmavadis is that it's ignorance. They don't have the idea of the personality of Godhead, but they are not opposed to the idea. It's just that they don't have the idea. It's not that they are deliberately opposed that, well, that absolute truth cannot be a person. They're not taking that stance. But the Mayavadis, they are taking that hard stance that, hey, absolute truth is it cannot be a person. But in either case, though they might be agreeing or disagreeing on the ultimate truth, one thing they all agree. What is it that they agree? They agree that, well, the soul is eternal. That everyone agrees, right? So this conclusion is established by all classes of the seers of truth. In the Vishnu Puran, it is stated that Vishnu and his abodes all have self-illuminated spiritual existence. Jyotimsi Vishnur Bhuvanani Vishnu. The words existent and non-existent refer only to spirit and matter, right? So basically, existent, anything that is existent has to be spirit, and everything else has to be non-existent because they are exclusive, and that falls under the category of matter. So in the beginning of the instruction of the Lord to the living entities, this is the beginning of the instruction of the Lord to the living entities. So this is the ABC of spiritual knowledge, right? Who are bewildered by the influence of ignorance. Removal of ignorance involves the re-establishment of the eternal relationship between the worshipper and the worshipable, and the consequent understanding of the difference between the part and parcel living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So what it essentially is saying that once the ignorance is removed, then what is the ignorance? Ignorance that we are the body. That is the ignorance. When that ignorance is removed, then we know that we are the spirit soul. Now, when we say that we are the spirit soul, then we want to know the source of that spirit soul. What is the nature of that spirit soul, right? And then we can, when that question arises, Atatho Brahma Jigyasu, then we can understand that, okay, if we are fragmental spirit soul, then there is the supreme spirit, and then what is the relationship between the two, right? And so the relationship initially begins as worshipper and the worshipable in the mood of servitorship. So here, the relationship between the worshipper and the worshipable, and the consequent understanding of the difference between the part and parcel living entities. So there is similarity, and as well as there is difference, right? What is the similarity? They are both spirit. What is the difference? Difference is that we are marginal or we are fragmental, while the supreme is the source of all this spiritual sparks. The spiritual sparks, they are fallible. They can be influenced by material energy, but the supreme is not influenced by material energy. The supreme is not covered by Mahamaya, is not covered by illusion. One can understand the nature of the Supreme by thorough study of oneself. So as I said many times, like, if you see other scriptures also, like Bible, they say the God created man in his image, right? So by studying our form, we can know that, okay, God also has a human-like form. So similarly, by studying, we can understand the nature of the Supreme by thoroughly studying our own self. The difference between oneself and the Supreme being understood as a relationship between the part and the whole. So if you want to study anything, right? Any object, even if you take an example, an object, that object comprises of different components. And so one can begin to understand the whole completely. One has to understand the components, and then one has to understand the relationship of that component with respect to the whole, right? If a complex machinery can have many parts and could have many gears, and then a good engineer or a designer who design that product understands all the different parts and the components of that machine and how they interplay with each other and how they are related and how that whole thing makes the machine work. Similarly, we are parts and parcels of the Lord, right? And so understanding the supreme truth means that we understand our position, our nature, and how we are related to the supreme Lord. And sometimes people might question that, how can we understand the supreme fully, right? Because if we are studying our own self, we are the part of the whole, and so we might have some understanding of the whole, but we cannot fully comprehend the whole because we are only studying the part, which is true. But the Lord is kind enough to, though we are part of the whole, still the Lord manifests within that part as Paramatma. And so the Paramatma is an expansion of the Lord, but that expansion is completely potent. It's full. It's not incomplete. So though we are parts and parts of the whole, still the Lord is present, or his image is present within our heart as Paramatma. So when we look inwards and we study ourselves, we are not just simply studying the soul. We can also realize Paramatma. That's why there are three realizations. If you go back, like Brahman realization, Paramatma realization, Bhagwan realization. So by studying ourselves, the soul, and the Paramatma, and Paramatma is non-different from Vishnu. And so that's how, by studying the part, one can understand the whole, because the image of the whole is actually present in the part. And to see an example of what are called fractal images. If you know what fractal images are, I'll give an example. A fractal image is an image where the same pattern is repeated within the parts, and there are so many different kind of fractal images. So if you take any example, let me see, any of these are fractal images, but if you see this particular pattern, so you see that's maybe it's like a loop. I think it's a golden ratio, what they call it. It kind of loops in a particular ratio. So there's an external loop, but within each there is another. See, there is another loop over here. So the same pattern is getting repeated so many times. So you take any section of it, that pattern is repeated. If you want to see examples in nature, what is it called? You will see in cauliflowers, or there is particular kind of broccoli, or I'm trying to think of particular kind of not Romano. I can't recall the name. But if you look at many fruits or flowers, you see the pattern keeps on repeating. So if you look at cauliflower, for instance, you have different. So the whole thing is like a bunch, but then each of the florets are also in the same shape as that of the entire whatever you call this whole cauliflower, again the same pattern. If you look at any component, the florets also have the same shape. So in this way, what happens is when the idea of the whole is represented in the part. So this is a rough analogy that I'm trying to give over here. So because the Supreme, who is Vishnu or Krishna, he is manifest as a Paramatma within the part, and so by studying the part, one can understand the whole. In the Vedanta Sutras as well as Srimad Bhagavatam, the Supreme has been accepted as the origin of all emanations. Such emanations are experienced by superior and inferior natural sequences. So what this means is that the Lord has many expansions. So you have the energy that we see outside, material energy, right? So you see the elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, an energy. It's expansion of the Lord. But that is considered inferior energy because the matter does not have any consciousness, right? But the Lord also has another expansion. It is also another energy, which is the soul, the spirit souls. They are considered superior because they have consciousness. So that's what it's described over here. And this will be described in detail in the 7th chapter, but Srila Prabhupada is just referring it over here. Although there is no difference between the energy and the energetic. The energetic is accepted as the supreme, and the energy or the nature is accepted as subordinate. And this theme appears at many places. And I also gave the example that, as it says over here, there is no meaning to the energetic if the energetic does not have energy, right? If the energetic does not have energy, you cannot even call it energetic, right? So the energetic is directly visible. You can see that person, but if that person is weak, if the person is not moving, so the body is dead, then there is no energy inside the body, right? Or any object. So I give this example many times. You take this mouse, so if it's moving, it has kinetic energy, right? Or if it's a particular altitude, it has potential energy. But that energy does not reside in any vacuum. The energy has to be contained inside an object, right? So in that sense, they are the same. There is no difference because energy cannot exist in a vacuum. It has to be inside an object, and the object has no value. Suppose if we go back to the same, if if an object has no kinetic energy, no potential energy, then you cannot use it for any purpose. And so the only reason that object has a value because it contains energy. So in that sense, they are non-different, but the energetic is accepted as supreme because it possesses the energy, right? So in case of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is a supreme person. He is a Purusha. He is the male. Everyone else is female or Prakriti. That means everyone else is possessed by him and is controlled by him. And that control is not that of a whimsical, lunatic person, right? So Krishna is very kind. He's merciful. He's all loving, and sometimes if we talk about any hierarchy or authority, the idea of benevolent authority, like the father or the parents, they have authority over the child, but they are not supposed to act whimsically, right? Like otherwise, somebody can go and call the child services, protection services. I have authority doesn't mean that I act according to my whim. And so similarly, one who's Krishna being all benevolent and all kind, he is the supreme enjoyer and we are to be enjoyed, but it's not in the sense that it's a painful or a miserable experience for the living entities. Actually, it's all pleasing. So if you see the pastimes of Krishna, all the devotees, they are also enjoying, but that enjoyment is secondary. That enjoyment is secondary in the sense that the enjoyment is not independent of Krishna. In this world, currently we are trying to enjoy independently of Krishna. In the spiritual world, the devotees, they want enjoyment in the association of Krishna. So though Krishna is Atmaram, he does not need anyone, he can be self-satisfied. But for his own enjoyment and also the enjoyment of his devotees, he wants those relationships. And the devotees are having very blissful relationship with Krishna, and they are also enjoying. But they are subordinate in the sense, as I mentioned in our last 2 weeks, right? So Krishna and the gopis, right? So gopis, they're enjoyed by Krishna, but it's not like a miserable experience where the gopis, they're also two kind, conforming and the non-conforming. Or sometimes in the same gopi you will find different kind of emotions, and they might challenge Krishna. It's not that they just but all the thing is, when there is a differential of hierarchy or authority, then there is a scope for exchange of rasha, where you might accept that authority or you might reject it, right, in a lovingly. And there's those acceptance and rejection is actually to create that dynamism for Krishna's enjoyment. Otherwise the life is very monotonic, there is no enjoyment. So if there is no question of, if there is no hierarchy, then there is rasas of conforming or non-conforming do not arise, right? And so that's why the idea, otherwise there, Krishna and Radha are same, right? So that's why it's saying the energy and the energetic, there is no difference. But for the purpose of rasa, right? So that hierarchy or the authority is there. So that in that sense, one is considered supreme and the other is considered subordinate. So it's just a semantic difference or categorization. Living entities, therefore, are always subordinate to the Supreme Lord, as in the case of master and the servant, or the teacher and the taught, right? And so when a teacher is teaching a child, the teacher is obviously taking a higher position. That doesn't mean the teacher is necessarily proud. When the teacher is teaching the child, the teacher gets satisfaction. And when the child learns nicely or the student learns nicely, then the teacher is also happy. And actually a teacher wants the student to be better than him, just like Dronacharya. He was always happy that Arjuna is learning so nicely. And then one day Arjuna becomes a better archer than him. That's like very satisfying to the teacher. And similarly, when the student is initially learning, he's feeling ignorant, he's feeling very humble, and always, even if he learns and maybe knows better than the teacher, eventually the student always feels humble. And that humility is also a feeling, it's an experience. But all those emotions can be experienced when that hierarchy is there. If the hierarchy is not there, then there's no question of if we, from our experiences, when we feel humble and you want to serve someone, there is a kind of, and we enjoy that, right? From our past experiences, there might be a teacher that you might adore so much, and especially in Indian Vedic culture, it's not just a matter of transactional teaching. There is the idea that you want to serve the teacher, especially in Vedic Gurukul system. We see that the Gurukulis, they serve the Guru, and so all these emotions can manifest fully when such arrangement of hierarchies there. So the Marxist idea to remove all kind of classes, that there is no distinction. I mean, they're all equal. It's in the spiritual culture. The culture also, equality is there, but then that equality doesn't mean equality in all respects. In the sense that still there is a distinction, right? In terms of just like in a company, right? This is the example I gave. Like you have a manager, and then there are individual contributors, and they all are equal. They have equal rights in terms of the privileges that the company provides. They have equal right to report any kind of abuse, and they have equal right or opportunity to grow, and they can all pursue their career. But then the hierarchy is there, otherwise the company cannot function. So so the equality is there, but you cannot artificially remove all the classes. Okay, so living entities, therefore, are always subordinate to the Supreme Lord, as in the case of master and the servant, teacher and the taught. Such clear knowledge is impossible to understand under the spell of ignorance. And to drive away such ignorance, the Lord teaches Bhagavad Gita for the enlightenment of all the living entities for all time. So with that, it's the end of the purport. I think we will end over here. Before that, if there are any questions or comments, you can bring it up right now or at later point in time is also fine. Anyone has any questions or comments? Yeah, Kashyap.
I'm trying to remember the situation of this verse, like
oh, where is it in the overall discussion? So Krishna actually starts explaining. I know we had a break of 2 weeks. So Krishna, he was talking about explaining Arjuna that the happiness and the distress, they all arise from interaction of the senses with sense object, and they're temporary. One must learn how to tolerate it. And then before that, he was explaining that there is a difference between the body and the soul. And so that why did it all start? Because before that, Krishna had said that, hey, you are mourning for people who are not worthy. I mean, those who are learned, they do not lament neither the living nor the dead. And you're speaking very intelligently, but actually what you are lamenting for is not worthy of grief. And says, why is it not worthy of grief? He says, you think these people are going to die, but actually there was never a time that I did not exist, you did not exist, these kings did not exist. So what does that mean? Right? You say, so the whole conversation started like this. He said, Krishna, Arjuna, you're lamenting. Why you're lamenting? You're lamenting for the body, right? But the body dies doesn't mean that these people are dying. They are always there. They're not going, so he says, okay, then what do you mean? The body is dead, but they are not dead. So then he used to explain the difference between the soul and the body. And so that's how that discussion started. And so the verse that we discussed today is further elaboration of that, hey, anything that has no endurance is material. It's just like the body is material. It has no endurance. Eventually it's going to die. It's not everlasting. And something that is everlasting or eternal is the soul. So he's just continuing on that theme.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, if not, we'll end. But I also would like to remind that, if you would like to have that Damodar kit anywhere in the US, unfortunately, we are not able to ship internationally, but anywhere you are in the US, for the Damodar month, we encourage all of you to recite this Damodarastakam prayer. I'll share that the lyrics as well as the YouTube recording. You can also look it up. It's quite popular. And then you can offer a ghee lamp or any lamp to that, and then sing this nice song at least once a day throughout this entire month of Kartik, which started yesterday. So from this full moon day, which was yesterday, to the next full moon day, and the midpoint would be Diwali. And so for 1 month, Vaishnavas, they meditate on this form of Krishna as Damodar, who is tied to the grinding mortar. So if you want that Damodar kit, which will have a photo of Yashoda Damodar, also Radha Nilmada, who is the deity here in Samamish, some incense, some dry prasadam. So we'll be more than happy to ship it anywhere in the US. Please, we're not going to charge anything. You can share your name and the shipping address. You can send a personal message to me, and then we will ship it over. So with that, I think I'll end the class over here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Talk to you all next Sunday.
Hare Krishna.
Saturday.
Hare
Hare Krishna.